In this video, we're going to get a custom GPT to help us make visuals using Python to make stuff like this. So these are graph or network visualizations. You probably know they have a bunch of bubbles and lines. Very cool. And we're going to get a custom GPT made that does that explicitly for us. That will be its only function. So starting off, we're going to go to where it says explore GPTs on the left-hand side of chat.openai.com/GPTs. You get to this page. In the top right-hand corner, you click Create. And then this takes you to the Creation Editor. So this is where we can actually start to build everything out. So we have a Create tab and we have a Configure tab. And right here, we have all of this information. The most powerful thing we're going to do is provide knowledge. And over here in Create, we're going to prompt the builder to actually act the way we want. And then over here on the right-hand side, this is where we'll interact with it to actually see how the output looks like. So one of the first things that's going to be valuable to do is to get information in pretty much any form in files that we can provide to the GPT to get it to act this way. So this Medium article is actually basically exactly what we want as far as like a primer set of information of like what we would want this to do. So we want to maybe take this and actually save this file or actually copy and paste some of the information from this and then provide it over to the GPT after we give initial instructions. So what I'm going to do for initial instructions, I'm going to build out a prompt like this. I'll just fast forward and then we'll read it. Okay, so this is going to be the first instruction that we provide. So I'm going to say, you are Graph Network Visualizer GPT. You will provide network visualizations of any data set or idea using your knowledge of various Python libraries. You will provide the visual in the chat to the user, the ability to download a PNG or JPEG, and a link to view a full screen option. You will also provide all the Python code necessary to recreate this visual. You will web scrape for data as needed. You will use Python NetworkX, PyViz, Viz.js, or GraphTool, or a combination of all of these to create visuals. You'll make sure these graphs are easy to read, colorful, and aesthetically pleasing. You will always output the graph, a file download option, and a full screen open option, and the code. So what I did here is I went through, I outlined explicitly how I want it to act, what it should be called. I said, here's what I want you to provide as a multi-tiered output. I'm like, hey, I want these multiple options. And then I said, here's what you will use. You'll know about this stuff, right? We're actually going to go feed it information about these libraries additionally. And then we're going to say, you can use these individually or combo them together. And then you're going to make sure that these graphs don't look awful, right? And then you're always going to output those basics. So this is a really good primer for what this thing is supposed to do. And this is going to be the first instruction that we give, and we're going to refine that over time, and then it's going to kind of mold the GPT to function in that custom way that we're looking for that will only be done by this GPT. So we're really specializing the algorithm to really work for us in the way that we want when we start with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to send this. This should go through. This should basically trigger what this command right here. This is updating GPT. So this is going to go through. It's going to update the GPT. This is writing to the core instructions of how this GPT is supposed to function, right? And then it's going to say, great, let's go through and do this. One of the things about this is that it will kind of make up things for itself. So it ignored kind of my instruction to take this. So I'm going to say, this is your name, right? It'll take that, it'll write that in. One thing to keep in mind too is that you only have a limited amount of prompts that you can use every 3 hours with GPT-4. That includes building these custom GPTs. So you're going to want to load as much into every prompt that you can within reason to push information back. So a short prompt that I made right here for clarity, although it may be valuable, it might not be the best use of your prompt. So keep in mind when you're providing this, you might easily just go over here and just put that in over here. And as you can see, this has kind of filled itself out. You can look at this, you could change this. Sometimes it tries to change all of this content by itself. You can upload instructions that say, hey, these are the only conversation starters you have. Here are your instructions. You can change all that. The big thing that we're going to want to do in the configure tab, though, just starting out, is we're going to want to make sure that code interpreter is on. DALL-E image generation, that's okay. Web browsing, that's okay. We'll basically leave all three of them on in case it needs to do any of that. I don't really think it needs to do any DALL-E image generation, but we'll just leave it for now, and we'll kind of move on. All right, so this right here is good to go. If we want to make an image or we want to instruct it to make a profile picture image of itself, we can do that. And what I would recommend doing is going over here to save, say publish to only me, confirm, and save this, right? And what we should do right out the bat is go ahead and check out this for ourselves. So what we'll say is make a network visualization of I'm just gonna say the top 10 most popular social media platforms. And so we're just gonna see what it outputs for that, and this will be just like how a user would actually interact with it. Okay, cool. So we did get an output here. This is pretty good, basic stuff. It outlined it twice. It looks like you can download here. I'm going to click on that and see what that download looks like. And then it gave the code. So it really took to heart my instructions, and it was really, really like, hey, do this whole thing. So it's spending a lot of brain power on this, but all in all, like, this is a basic version of what we want. So we're going to refine this moving forward, and that'll require us to go back into Explore GPTs, go into My GPTs, and then actually change the instructions through here. So we'll go through to here, and then we'll actually go straight to Graph Network Visualizer GPT, edit it, right? And then we're kind of back at that builder, right? So we can interact with it here or back where we were, but overall, this is where we're just gonna see how it works and then add additional knowledge to it. So one of the things that I'm gonna do to add additional knowledge to it is I'm going to go and I'm going to take from just places on the web, right? So if I've got any sort of code references or anything like that show things that I like all these look very good. Maybe what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this information and I'm going to bring it into the actual environment. Alternatively, what I could do is I could go and I could print this as like a PDF and upload it to the knowledge. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then this actual, like this article, this set of information will just be part of the base level knowledge of the GPT. So I just hit print and then I said save as PDF. So I'm just going to take this PDF file, we'll take it and we'll upload it to the knowledge. So I'm going to actually grab a couple more and do the same thing with those. So we're going to upload these right in the configure section. We're going to click upload files and put them right in there. Cool. So now that we have those uploading, whenever they are fully in there, we're going to get a update. We're going to hit save, update that. We want to make sure those changes get published, and then we can interact with this again. And then as we interact with it, we'll begin to give it feedback, and we'll begin to tell it over on the create side, hey, we want you to kind of change this and change that, modify this, modify that, and overall we'll get closer to the true result that we really, really want. Okay, cool. So my first prompt back, I'm going to just fix a couple things. I'm going to say, make yourself an awesome profile picture. And then these conversation starters. So these right here, these are an example of bad conversation starters. If I click this will say visualize this data network, and then it's just nothing, right? So what that does is it just wastes a prompt, right? So I actually say, hey, do not use these, and I actually cite this one. I'm saying, this does not make sense because it's blank and it wastes a prompt for the user. And then I, explicitly outline a couple more of these, and then I say, have all your conversation starters ensure that they provide a suggestion that is real at minimum. So I'm kind of loading this up with like two things that it needs to do. Make yourself an awesome profile picture, then also get rid of those conversation starters. So we're looking for it to make a profile picture, great. And then we're also looking for it to remove any of these starters that are they're just not useful. So this one, that's great. So perfect. It generated a bunch of link node analysis, very colorful, so it'll be a really good little visual thing. Lots of bubbles and lines, And then we're looking for it to do additional updates to remove those starters. So hopefully it does both. And then at this point, we're looking for some really good default conversation starters where maybe they're suggesting ideas of what might look good in a graph. So we have this default knowledge in there. We have an updated profile picture. And we're going to get some new conversation starters. Cool. And then here you go. Here's the new starters. Here's the new profile picture. All that should be updated. I like to click this quite a bit so that way it just keeps everything fresh. Also, keep in mind if that anything messes up with this, go ahead and hit the revert, and then that'll change it back. So if you ever have a situation where it's just erroring out or something weird is happening, I've had success by clicking revert, and then that'll help. Okay, so I'm going to prompt it saying create a graph illustrating the top 10 most influential states in federal elections in the US and the various cities in those states. So when I prompt that, I'm really just sort of getting to know what the output will be, looking at its consistency, evaluating the output. So right now we're kind of noting that it's saying, hey, I don't have access to real-time data or databases, and then it's giving us a list, and it's spending a lot of time not making me a visual. So I think it will make a visual, but it's spending a lot of time on that. So one of the things I can note is like, hey, don't worry about giving me all of this text. Like, don't spend time outputting all this. I don't really care about that. That's just a standard GPT output. What I really want is the visual. So I can actually take that. I could say, I can just copy and paste all this. I can say, do not worry about providing a response like this. Just focus on providing the graph, visual, and at most only provide a short paragraph of additional information. The goal is to provide the visual. The code and the download link of that visual. Cool. So right now we can see what we got. Some surface level thoughts I have is this is small. There's no hierarchy of the states. They're all clustered together. They're hard to read. All the labels are kind of blasted together. So this is a start, but it's not super good. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to take this starter prompt, and that's going to be what I'll basically evaluate this thing for moving forward. I'm going to take this and put this in a notepad. I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to save it in a notepad so that way I always have it and I can use it and I can check on this thing moving forward. So once I send this, the big thing to think about here is I just push this information in here, telling it, hey, don't worry about that. It's going to update the GPT, then it's going to refresh this side totally. So that's why I wanted to copy and paste that prompt so that way I didn't lose it, because it'll kind of keep me from being able to go up here and copy this to do this again. And yes, we have the code. One thing I do want to state is that, I don't need the code output entirely. I just need it like clickable in there. So that might be another instruction that we kind of add here in a minute. So on swing number 2 with that prompt, we did get basically a very similar initial response. And sometimes it takes a while for your instructions to be understood by the GPT to actually get rid of this behavior. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's like extremely hard to get it to leave, but just keep providing that feedback, and then generally just keep prompting that output, and eventually be very explicit. Tell it like, hey, do not provide lots of text, only provide this, right? And the more that you do that, eventually the algorithm will learn and it'll provide things out. So like right here, we got kind of a similar breakdown. I'm going to say, this is hard to read, and I do not understand which state is most important. Also, can you make the colors better and maybe create this visual in dark theme? So we're going to see if it'll actually refine this into a dark theme graph with better colors and better labels. Okay, so this is not better, but what we're going to do is just give it feedback and continue to work. So what I might say is, this is even worse, very hard to read. Can you provide a dark theme visual with better labeling and better diagram spacing? So we're kind of describing that the spacing sucks, can't read any of the text, and we're going to see if we can get it to something good. And if this output continues to be illogical, what we might do is go find some good code that actually like provides exactly what we want, and then we might provide that over to this. And we can kind of look at this code to understand what it's doing. It's using NetworkX, matplotlib. It's creating this basic data, and then it's creating the graph. Somewhere in there we got the color. So overall, we're basically just going to want to see what it's doing. And what it's tried to do is it tried to create a hierarchy here. You can kind of see California, Texas, Florida, New York, right? So it's kind of showing how the states should be. So this would be really cool if I could read it. So once again, I can't read it. So over here, I'm going to move to the left-hand side. So basically, this thing is kind of stuck on making its text white and its background white. So I'm going to put a couple of things in here. So I'm going to say, make sure you provide visuals and dark theme when able. Make sure you do not focus on providing big clumps of text. The goal is the visual. I'm going to say, do not provide white text on a white background. This is unreadable. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is go find some code that looks good, and then actually just push it in here. And I'm going to say like, hey, here's some examples of some good visuals. So NetworkX actually has a couple different things for labels and colors. So I'm really just going to go through and I'm going to grab some of this, just kind of like this. I'm going to go through, grab that. And then I could even download the source code and then put that in there as knowledge. So that way it has some representation of some good code that doesn't, like, this is totally readable, right? You need something like this. This is way better than what it's outputting right now. So I'll take that, push it into the create tab, and then also into the knowledge. All right, cool. So I've copied and pasted a couple of things in there. I think that I just hit my cap, so I'm actually going to come back after this point. But what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm just going to add knowledge to the configure section right here. When I come back, I'll go ahead and move in to that. And here's an example of all those files uploaded to the knowledge. So that way it has like all the reference documentation like right there where it can access it. It doesn't have to go reach out and actually grab it, because that would actually take more power out of the output of the GPT. So this is where you actually put this information if you want it to be hyper relevant and for it to be easily accessible inside of the algorithm kind of feeding it. Alright, so another example that I can show you is I tried to create a visual of all the characters in Star Wars on the Empire and Rebellion side, and that turned out alright, but then I had to give this prompt right here that said, hey, I want the graphs to be dark theme, readable text, rich and varied colors, and don't clump all the nodes together, and then just offer the Python code. Don't worry about printing out all the code at the same time, because this takes a lot of power away from what you can get as far as an output. So after that, it said it updated, and then I asked it to do a different situation where I just said like, hey, make a network of all the various branches of the US military and their commands, and then gave this type of breakout. So this was a lot better, but still not doing things really in dark theme kind of like I wanted, and it's kind of readable, but on this blue that's not so great with the black right there. So I'm gonna pass this right back in again, and then I'm going to save this prompt, because this is one of the ones I'm going to use in a notepad to just kind of test and refine. So we're definitely getting better. This is headed way towards what we want, but what we do lack, and this is an initial ask, is we wanted there to be a way to ask for a download of a PNG or a JPEG. So we're gonna try to get that to happen as well. So that'll be kind of one of the next things that we'll ask. Also, it added some conversation starters that I don't like, so we're going to take those in, ask for those to be changed, offer some new ones, and on and on and on. So this is just a big infinity loop that we're going to keep working on. An example of a thing that can happen is this, where you get basically a faulty prompt return. So this one is asking for the data that I'm asking it to go find and create me a visual of. So basically, I'm going to add this command to my refinement prompt that's going to say, if the user asks you to visualize data that you do not have, go find it on the web. Do not ask for it. That's going to be one of the prompts that I provide back. And then sometimes I just take the old refinement prompt and I add it into the other prompt that I just wrote. So that way when I push this, it will add that feedback redundantly. Like it keeps getting that same feedback, and that will really slam the point home that like this is the functionality that you want. So when the GPT updates, it will get that same feedback over and over again, and that repetition does hone and refine the model to actually do what you want eventually. It does take a lot of times, and sometimes you're going to want to keep track of how many prompts you're actually doing, because this can evaporate, or it can vaporize like pretty quickly, take away all your prompts because you spent them all giving the same feedback over and over again. So sometimes you might need a couple hours to be able to, to get to where you want. Okay, so we're going to try this prompt again, see what we get. Okay, so here's an example where it didn't do dark theme, it didn't do readable text, but it did kind of make these into more nodes. And then right here, it gave a download file, and it just offered up the code. So this part was the part that we wanted it to do, and this part was the part we didn't want it to do. So what we're going to do is just toy with it, give it some prompts, and we're just going to say, can you make the visual dark theme? I cannot read it. And sometimes my thought is that the processing that happens on this side and the interactions with the user and those conversations may also be taken back to configure and update the GPT based off of the refinement that's given, of hey, like I don't like this, I do like that. And then right here is saying this is dark theme, but I'm not sure that it understands what that is. I'm just gonna say that is not dark theme. And so, this seems redundant, but like this is how you do train the model. It will require you to say yes, no, a bunch of times before you actually get the output that you want. Okay, cool. So I just ran one of the prompts that I had before, and I got a much better output, although it wasn't dark theme. So it says network of U.S. military branches and their commands, and then it has all of these kind of clumped together. I do wish that they had some edges about how they related, and I did like the thing where I had the DoD in the center. That made a lot more sense. But this is a little bit more readable because it's black text on a white background. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to propose this refinement. I'm basically going to provide this. I'm going to copy this again, paste that back in there, and then I'm actually going to look at one thing I added was that the conversation starters were illogical and to change them. And so these ones, if you pushed the button on any of these conversation starters, they wouldn't make any sense because they say things like visualize these connections in the network graph. Well, what connections? If you press that, you can't add anything to it. It doesn't make sense, right? So it would go and it would spend a prompt to do nothing. So I'm gonna just actually like take those out, go back here, update this, hit confirm, and then I'm gonna refresh the page to make sure that like 100% all of the updates posted, and then I'm going to add this feedback back in. Okay, and without too much discussion on this one, this turned out a little bit better. It's still not quite what we need it to be, so we're gonna add some clarity to the existing kind of pile of instruction logic that we have for it to change, and we'll keep on going. A lot of this is just providing refinements of the same feedback several times until you start to get out the gate exactly the type of response that you would like first prompt, right? Or maybe even second prompt, but you should get something pretty good on the first one. Okay, so this is a much better one that we just got using the prompt that we had before. One of the things that I had to do was I wasn't getting any traction with just adding the prompt back in. So sometimes if you go hit revert, then that will go and it reconfigure the whole thing to then I guess it resets it. We'll roll it back to a previously saved version, and then it generally will keep a better track of your updated feedback. But I'm going to keep on providing feedback until it kind of does everything that I want. And if that involves just hitting update and revert every time that I add something and I start to get into a redundant pattern of having to provide the same feedback every time, then eventually, hopefully this will go sort itself out. One of the things to keep in mind is that if you hit the download links, this will show visually that it has a white background, but then if you open the download, you actually see that it is either a PNG or a dark theme. So it's kind of hard to understand how this is laid out. I think as a JPEG, that would be a clear representation. So maybe what I'm going to do is update my information to say, give me a JPEG download. So that way we don't have a transparent background. That could just be like any sort of background we want. Like it's explicitly a dark theme breakdown of the background. So I just want to show you guys, we finally got it to output something that looks this good. So this is, it's a dark theme graph network diagram. It has nice fonts. Everything looks good. The only thing that is that kind of throws things off is that when you look at it, it still looks like it's white, but when you click on the download, you will get everything in the dark theme as I just showed you. So I'm making sure that it's outputting everything as dark theme and then always giving the download links. That's kind of the finishing touch here, but we're really getting everything to come together at this point, and I did have to work on it several times. I probably have about 100 prompts in this GPT, but I think we're at a point where I'm going to work on it a little bit more, just to experience it, just keep on asking it for things. But I think we're really in the right direction, and we're almost ready to publish. Now, when it comes to publishing, you can kind of do that whenever, but you really just say update for everyone, confirm, and then I would just let it go, and then I would go engage with it a little bit as it's published to actually see how it interacts. So I did that, and I found things to be a little bit weird. There was certain situations where it was asking the user for too much data, and I just wanted to go do the web browsing and figure all that out. But anyway, all in all, we got everything pretty much figured out, and we're looking good. So I'm going to give it a couple more prompts, but that's basically how you build a custom GPT. Once you get it to the state that you like, that's the end of it. You don't really need to worry about anything else. You publish it, and then the thing is out available for people to use. So if this was helpful for you, please drop a like and a comment, and subscribe if you want more videos on how to use AI, how to work with ChatGPT, or anything like that. If you watched this long, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.